15 when I invented the artificial dog heart. How you doing?
John Hughes, the creator of The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Uncle Buck,
Did I ever tell you about the time that I signed a professional ball contract?
would like to introduce you to Jim Dodge.
You got fired again, didn't you?
I'm not like everybody else.
He's got brain damage.
Who does not?
He spent 21 years improving on reality.
Going to Paris on an F-14.
Jim is going to find himself.
Are you a slacker?
No, Presbyterian.
I can offer you $4.44 per hour.
$4.44. What about the benefits?
There's no eating. You're not being paid to eat, so don't. And don't play any music.
I don't have any time to play any music.
Don't touch me.
Welcome to the target team.
You're locking me in?
Boo. Then, one wild night, Jim Dodge finally found the real thing. In aisle 5.
What are you doing here?
I work here. Do you know how you make me feel?
Like a natural woman?
I'm a janitor in training. You're an heiress.
You know what your problem is?
No, but let me go look at my list.
What are you planning to steal? Hairspray?
Well, we haven't decided yet, have we?
From John Hughes. Career opportunities. The story of a man and a woman, aisles apart.
If I was sweating, would you touch me?
I would probably touch you even if you were covered with spiders.
And one night that changed everything.
It's not as uncomfortable as I thought it'd be. Oh, no, it's not that.
Hello, I'm Katie, and welcome to RetroMade, your pop culture rewind. Today, we are flashing back to 1991 to discuss the little lesser-known John Hughes flick, Career Opportunities. Returning to the show is Sean Malloy, formerly of I Must Break, this podcast, covering one of my favorite action stars, Dolph Lundgren. Sean, welcome back. What's new with you? Are we going to get any more episodes? What's going on with I Must Break This?
Yeah. I closed out the journey out of the episode just because it seems like his career's kind of run its course. You know, he seems to have kind of slipped into kind of a semi-retirement of sorts. And so I felt like ending it the way I did felt like a good step. But I have had a few people who've reached out and have said, like, are you going to put any of the old episodes up on YouTube or put them back on the feed and everything? I'm considering bringing it back. You know, like you can probably attest, podcasting is that itch you got to scratch every now and again. So I've been kicking around with a couple buddies, some ideas of some shows, but I don't know. I have to admit, I mean, podcasting, like you can attest, at the hobbyist level is a lot of work. And so it's one of those things where it's been kind of nice having the year off and to be a guest on shows like this here.
Awesome. We're going to spin the RetroMade wheel for 1991. So let's open the time capsule, Sean. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Okay. Are you ready to spin? I'm going to spin on your behalf, but let's see what category we come up with. Let's see if we can test your knowledge for 1991. We've come to Totally Tasty. All right. Which chip brand launched its now iconic Once You Pop, You Can't Stop campaign in 1991, cementing its stackable chips in the cultural snack lexicon?
Pringles. Right? Yeah, Pringles.
Definitely. Good job. Which lunchbox drink saw a spike in popularity in 1991, in part due to its flashy silver pouch and extreme sports-themed commercials targeting kids?
Capri Sun. It's amazing you mentioned this because, yeah, these are staples of my kids' lunches even to this day.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. All right, let's do another category. Let's see what we come up with here. Perfect for a teacher. Pages of the Past. Which Scholastic published mystery book series, already well established by 1991, remained a book fair favorite thanks to titles like Who Killed Harlow Tromby and The Case of the Silk King, letting readers choose the path. What were these series called?
Oh,
Or what was this type of book called?
Choose Your Own Adventure. Those were amazing, weren't they? Yeah. In fact, I can still remember my very first Choose Your Own Adventure book. It was something about the space vampires or something like that. It was something space vampires. But the covers of those books were so electric. The paintings were just amazing. So, yes.
Choose Your Own Adventure. Great, great, great. Now, this one is a magazine. Which monthly teen magazine featured cover stories like Crush Confessions and How to Flirt Without Freaking Out, and was known for its iconic Trauma-Rama section?
Was that Tiger Beat?
Good guess. It's for, I would say, a little bit older teens.
I'm going to guess 17.
Very good, Sean. 17. I loved this magazine. Let's do another category. This category is Can Sean Come Out to Play? Released by Nintendo a few years earlier, this handheld console dominated 91's gaming scene with titles like Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins. What was this device?
The Game Boy. The Game Boy.
Yep. Very good. Game Boy was correct. This tabletop game became hugely popular in 1991, inviting players to assume the roles of adventurers in a fantasy world, rolling dice to determine outcomes. What was the name of this game?
Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes, very good. Very good. Yep, Dungeons and Dragons. All right, let's do one more category before we get into the meat of the episode. Oh, these are always fun.
Fire.
Big screen time machine. You are on fire. You're doing very well. Well, they're kind of easy questions, but let's see. These are the top 5 box office hits for 1991. Do you have any guesses before I start giving you clues what the top 5 movies were for 91?
For 1991, I mean, I was going to the movies regularly then. I'm going to guess that one of them was Hook.
Good guess, but no.
Okay. Is Beauty and the Beast one?
It is not, but I do think that's in the top 10.
Oh, boy. Then, gosh, 1991. Oh, T2. T2 has got to be one of them, right? Terminator 2? That was one. Yeah.
Yep.
That was one of them. And
that's the number one. That's the number one.
And I'm trying to think of what else came out around that time. I'm going to kick myself because Home Alone was 1990, so it's not that. Oh, boy. And are you sure it wasn't Hook? Okay, I'm throwing in the towel. Well, what were they?
Well, you got the number one. Okay, number 2. A legendary outlaw gets an American accent, a Morgan Freeman sidekick, and one killer Bryan Adams ballad.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Yep.
Great movie. It still holds up, too. Still holds up.
I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe I'll have to give it a rewatch.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
The number 3 movie, your hint is an FBI trainee seeks help from a charming cannibal to catch a killer who loves his sewing machine.
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs.
Yes. See, sometimes the hints are just a little too easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Silence of the Lambs is an interesting one, too, because if you really break it down, it's a horror movie. I mean, it is the most grotesque horror movie imaginable, but it was never really labeled as much. It was more a thriller, which is kind of the more prestigious version of horror. So it's always kind of amazing to me that went on to win all of these awards, including Best Picture. When you really strip it down, it is the most basic of slasher films imaginable. You know what I mean? But we don't want to call it that because then that makes it look trashy and tasteless. No, it is a thriller, Katie, though that that makes it more acceptable.
Indeed. You're right. It was really good, though. I think it's elevated from some of the others. Number 4, we have a midlife crisis meets cattle drives when 3 urbanites trade briefcases for cowboy hats.
Oh, boy. Okay, that clue may have stumped me. I'm going to give up. What is that one?
City Slickers.
Okay. Another classic.
I know. I haven't seen that in so long.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones that, because it was such a monster hit, they made it a sequel. When you look at it, you're like, did the story really need to be told again? Did it need to be continued? But hey, money talks in Hollywood. So.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. Okay, I think you'll get the last one. They're creepy, kooky, mysterious, and spooky.
The Addams
They made
Family.
a snappy comeback in this ghoulish comedy. Yes. Oh my God, I loved the Addams Family.
Which trivia, if I could please pose a fun trivia question at you. Do you by chance know or remember the teaser that was put in front of the Addams Family movie in theaters that got a lot of people excited? They hadn't even shot the movie or finished it yet, but they put a teaser in front of Addams Family to get people talking and excited.
What?
Wayne's World.
What?
Yeah, look it up on YouTube. It's quite funny. It's Wayne and Garth, doing the snapping to Addams Family because they were both Paramount movies. So Paramount was, bankrolled both of them.
Awesome.
So,
okay.
but it's quite fun to look at.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I totally forgot about that, but now this is bringing back a memory. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, I think you did pretty good in the time machine. I would say I would give that Mr. Teacher an A-, maybe.
Okay.
You didn't get all the movies, so A-.
It is summertime.
Yeah.
It is summertime, so
Yeah,
you have to give me a break.
that's true. Shall we get into the movie career opportunities?
Yes.
This came out March 29th, 1991. It's PG-13. It's very short. Even watching it last night, I was like, wow, it's over already. Okay. It's got a 5.8, which is not very good on IMDb. The director here is not John Hughes. It is Bryan Gordon, who, if that doesn't sound familiar to you, he's done a lot of TV directing and has been nominated for an Emmy twice. It looks like for Curb Your Enthusiasm. So that's Bryan Gordon. John Hughes is our writer here. And this is an interesting movie because Hughes said that the film was a disappointment because he didn't have his usual creative controls. And he later stated that the film was cheap and vulgar and that his suggestions for the movie were ignored. Therefore, he was so unhappy how this movie turned out that he asked Universal to remove his name from it. But they refused because he was kind of a hot name at this time coming off of Home Alone. What do you think, Sean?
Well, I was hoping you'd bring that up, actually, because I, just found that out myself about a year or two ago. And it's really interesting to hear that because, yeah, I vividly remember seeing this. I didn't see it in theaters, but I did rent it when it came to VHS. And I don't know. I don't know how you feel, but I've always felt it was a delightful little movie. You know what I mean? Like it's not amazing or anything. Is it one of John Hughes's best? Probably not, no. But I think it is just a fun little movie. If you look at it compared to his other movies that he's known for, okay? So if you look at it compared to his high school movies, right? Breakfast Club, Weird Science, and 16 Candles, all of those, right? I think it can be viewed almost as an interesting continuation of those, okay? What happens to the teenager that we focused on in high school, that we spent this time with in high school? What happens to that individual once they graduate and go out into the real world and don't really know their place, don't really know where they're going or what their true purpose is? And I think that is something that for the most part, I don't know about you, but definitely me, anybody in their early 20s who's kind of lost and is kind of figuring, okay, now what? What's the next step? I think, it's certainly relatable on that end. So when I read that Hughes was not a fan of it and was disappointed with how it turned out, that always kind of surprised me because I don't know if you felt this way, but it does feel like a John Hughes movie. It does kind of have that small town, kind of Midwestern kind of look and feel and flavor about it. It does have great characters. I feel that the characters are all, for the most part, fairly well defined. And so, yeah, I've never really understood that. I don't know really what Hughes was expecting. I'd love to take a look at the original script to see kind of what he was hoping for.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I think it looks and feels like a John Hughes movie 100%. So I've never really understood or agreed with his sentiment.
You know, that's interesting you say that. Here's something that might surprise you. I had never seen this before. And it's lesser known, I think, for a reason. But so last night was my first watch. And because of the IMDb rating, because I had read that, I had a pretty low bar. And I was kind of surprised. I liked it way more than I thought I was going to like it. It does have a lot of beats of John Hughes movies, but there's something a little... His point about he thought it was cheap and vulgar, I could see why he said that. Like, it is different in that way. Like, he tended to shy away from the cheap nature of teen movies that are just like boobs and, fart jokes and stuff like that. And so this very clearly was trying to capitalize on Jennifer Connelly's looks. That was very clear to me watching it last night. So maybe that's kind of what he meant. And I too would really like to know what his suggestions were that were ignored. Well, listeners of RetroMade, we have a bonus guest today for career opportunities. I actually, having not seen career opportunities before this episode, was really surprised to learn a lot about it. And one of the things that came up is that while John Hughes did write and produce this movie, he was not a super big fan of how it turned out. And so he wanted to disown it. And that got me in conversation with our special guest today, Anson Kessinger. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That is correct, yes.
Perfect. Now, Anson, you seem to be a man of many talents: writing, directing, pinball, putt-putt, a little bit of everything. Tell
I do
us
some
about
things.
yourself. Yeah, tell us about you.
No, I'm a screenwriter. Have won a few competitions. Just love the craft. That's kind of what got me into this whole deep dive into career opportunities, because I had heard about the drama and how much John Hughes wanted to distance himself from it. And then to find out that so much had been changed about the screenplay. Like my holy grail right now, my white whale, is to find an original script, just to see what was changed.
I'd be very curious about that as well. Yeah, John didn't get his usual license to do what he wanted on this, didn't he? Is that accurate?
As far as I can tell, I watched back in last night. Imprint Films put out a Blu-ray copy of it with a commentary with Bryan Gordon, the director, and Jillian Wallace Horvath, who was fantastic in moderating the commentary. And yeah, they said that, the studio really didn't like the opening. They didn't like the ending, had both of those rewritten and reshot. So I think he was probably fairly annoyed by that. But I mean, really, tonally, it's all over the place, isn't it? Because it opens with the whole, like, this is a gangland murder, really rough, but then it's like not threatening. And tonally, it's all over the place for sure. Both Bryan Gordon, the director, and Frank Whaley, who I because I'm insane, and I actually got a cameo from Frank Whaley to tell me, just give me the dirt. Like, I wanted to know what happened. And he mentioned that John Hughes probably wasn't so much of a fan of both he and Bryan Gordon just played around with the script. They did not stick to dialogue. They thought that they would punch up dialogue and make it, in Frank Whaley's words, they would make it better. So the fact that they were playing around, I think, so much with the script, and then you have the drama from the studio saying, like, yeah, we want to do this. He said that John Hughes wanted, one, for his name to be taken off of it, tried to distance himself from it, and also tried just to not have it released.
Question about that. Do you know at what point he determined that he didn't want his name on it anymore?
I don't know. I mean, it could have been when they started with reshoots, or when maybe he saw a rough cut. I don't know. I do know, though, that through the commentary, they said that the only day he came to set was the John Candy shot.
Okay, that's very interesting and unusual. Now, because I'm doing a whole season of John Hughes movies, I'm learning more about him and his style. A big fan growing up, but some movies that he, maybe not quite as proud of. He has used the pseudonym Edmond Dante, but that didn't come until I want to say, what was it, 92? So maybe like a year later. So I was just curious maybe why he didn't, maybe he came to that realization that that's something that he could do later, but he used the pseudonym. I mean, it seems like everybody knows that that's John Hughes, but
Right.
yeah. So I'm curious why he didn't.
Was this a catalyst, do you think? I mean, were those
Maybe.
pseudonym titles, did they come after 91?
Yeah. Beethoven. I think the first movie, and that came out in 92, that he wrote
then
under a pseudonym.
This must have been the title that gave him a plan.
Maybe. That's interesting. So it sounds like Frank Whaley didn't have, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but maybe.
Well, I can
Yeah.
tell you what he told me.
Yeah, please do.
I mean, he was young, Jennifer Connelly, of course, and Bryan Gordon was a first-time director on this. So I think they were just they were just getting their legs. They were really just, trying to have fun with it. And I think maybe John Hughes was maybe a little more rigid and like, no, this is the way that I want it to go. But Frank Whaley also said that he's proud of it. He thinks it stands up. And he's like, it's not Citizen Kane. It's not, he said, it's not The Godfather.
No.
But he's like, I think it stands up. And I saw it originally in the theater in 91. It's kind of nostalgic for me. My grandmother took me to see it, and, a young boy of 16, Jennifer Connelly. She was fantastic. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a great movie, but I can still see them, being proud of it.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for that story. That's really interesting insight. Do you mind my asking how much his cameo cost? How much I find that
it was $50 American dollars.
Okay.
And I also made sure to make the most of my money. I actually asked him a second question, which was screenwriting advice.
What do you recall what he said?
Just keep writing, keep at it, refine your craft. In a nutshell, yeah, that was it.
Okay, so nothing new for you there. No.
I mean, but I guess as a way to kind of press, just keep pressing you on. You're on the right path.
Okay. Are you a fan of John Hughes or not? Do you have thoughts about John as a writer or director?
I think he's a product of his time. I think a lot of stuff I think socially doesn't really work today.
Right.
Like I said, I like career opportunities, but there are some icky parts for sure.
Well, in a lot of his movies, as we're rewatching them, I'm like, ooh, yikes.
Yeah. But this will bring me to, I want to put my wife over real quick. I introduced her to Weird Science. Probably just about 5-10 years ago.
I love it.
And it was her first time ever seeing it.
Oh, wow.
And we get to the end, and we get to the end credits, and she blows my mind. She says, I get it. It's Mary Poppins for teenage boys.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, I cannot. That is amazing.
It is, isn't it? That's great. I've not heard anyone use that comparison before. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to your wife.
She nailed it.
Yes, she did. This has been awesome. Thank you. First of all, it's great.
Thank you.
What kind of stuff do you work on? You said you're a screenwriter.
I do some contests. I'm just writing my own stuff, trying to get my stuff out. I do 48-hour film projects, if you're familiar with those.
No.
It's where teams assemble, and within the time frame of 48 hours, they write, shoot, edit, and submit a 4 to 7 minute film.
Oh, yes. Now I have heard of this.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
And you're giving the prompt of a required character, required line of dialogue, and a prop. And all of those must be included.
You have some very fascinating experience. And so I wondered if there was anywhere that you wanted to send people to learn about you or your work.
I actually won the 48-hour film project for Richmond last year. And if anybody would like to check that film out, it's on YouTube. It's called Modern Love. If you just search Modern Love 48.
Awesome. I'm excited to check it out. And everybody, listeners, we have to support our independent filmmakers and people trying to break in. So please check out the link. Anson's film will be in the show notes. So check that out. And it was great to meet you. It does feel a little off to me. It doesn't feel like a typical... So we'll get to the plot in a second, but here's how it's set in a Target. And, the way that I looked at it, I was like, well, it's sort of like a Ferris Bueller meets Mannequin, but the Target brand version of it. Like, it's not quite John Hughes. It's like the generic version of a John Hughes movie, maybe, is how I would put it.
Well, it's really interesting you mentioned that because, look, the guy is one of the most famous directors, I think we could agree, of all time. His scripts really captured a particular generation. I will say about him and his script, I don't want to mitigate his talents or anything like that in terms of writing or whatever. But it seems to me, especially as he got later on in his career, as we approached the 90s, he was more of a gimmick writer. You know what I mean? Like, he was more into recycling some of his previous scripts and redoing them and swapping them out. I mean, the best example I can do is look, as I love the movies. I love Pretty in Pink and I love Some Kind of Wonderful. You and I have talked about them. But if you look at those movies, they are the exact same movie. I mean, when he wrote Some Kind of Wonderful, he wrote that purely out of spite because he was pissed off that they went with the ending that he didn't intend. So if you look at Some Kind of Wonderful, it's the exact same. It's the exact same thing as Pretty in Pink. He just swapped out, instead of making the lead a female, he made it a male and a tomboy as the best friend. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing. And so if you look at career opportunities, you always hear, I've always read in interviews that like he would write a script over the course of a weekend. You know what I mean? And so if you look at a film like Career Opportunities, it's very evident because all he's doing is he's taking Home Alone, okay, which he had written, about a year or two prior. All right. He's taking Home Alone and he's saying, okay, well, wait a minute. What about instead of a boy being trapped alone in his house, it's in a department store? And what if instead of a little kid, it is a grown man just out of high school? You know what I mean? And so that's what he's done. I'm going to get stones thrown at me for saying this, so please don't be mad at me. But I've never found Christmas Vacation to be that wonderful. It's amazing to me that film has gone down as being such a classic, when in the end, there's really not much of a plot per se. It's just a collection of gags and various set pieces. It feels like an extended sitcom in a lot of ways. I don't look at that film as being like amazing writing by any means. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I can certainly see, there are some John Hughes ingredients in it, but all he's really doing with his scripts at this point is just, okay, I'm taking this one, kind of like Mad Libs, right? Okay, let's take the script for Home Alone. Let's take the script for, you know what I mean? Whatever. And then I'm just going to kind of swap out these characters. Boom, a new movie. So if he's mad that it didn't turn out that way, it's like, well, maybe don't write a script over the course of a weekend and collect the check, John.
It is very templated. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. It's interesting doing this John Hughes season. I'm learning a lot more about him as a person, and he's got a personality that not everyone loves and not everyone gets along with, and he butts heads a lot. And it's just really interesting because I didn't know any of that, but now revisiting the movies, you can see so many of the same beats. So it'll be interesting to see the rest of the 90s movies. But yeah, like, this is 91, and if you guys haven't seen this movie, or, if it's been over 30 years for you, we have Jim, and he is the dorky son of a local cement contractor who lives at home and has no direction. Josie is the gorgeous daughter of a wealthy businessman who dreams of leaving town. When Jim is locked inside a Target store on his first night as an overnight janitor, he discovers Josie, who fell asleep while contemplating shoplifting. Now, locked in together, the pair learns that they have a lot in common. Little do they know that two petty criminals are on the lam and looking for a place to hide.
And there's the Home Alone.
Yep. The thieves, the incompetent. No, you're absolutely right. The two incompetent thieves.
He took the Home Alone template.
He did take the, yep. And instead of, I guess, like a lot of the adventures is really more like out of boredom at first throughout the movie. He's skating and he's cleaning and just having fun and costumes and really do the booby traps to catch the criminals. I guess that's how it's slightly different, is it's just like, that's the Ferris Bueller of it all. What would you do if you were stuck in a Target, overnight, kind of a thing? I loved Target growing up, so I can't believe I hadn't seen this movie before.
And that's one thing that's actually kind of cool about this film in a lot of ways, is that Target still exists. You know what I mean? I mean, that's one thing in a weird way that kind of makes this film, I don't want to say timeless, but where it can still play nowadays. I mean, and talk about some crazy product placement for Target, because if John Hughes and the production company wanted, they could have just made this some regular department store that was kind of Target adjacent, if you will, but you know, they could have called it Bullseye for that matter. But the fact that it is an actual Target that every state has makes this film very, very much relatable in a lot of ways. And so that's one thing that I think is so cool is, I mean, this movie came out how many years ago, and Target is still around. It still exists.
I'm kind of surprised that they used Target instead of just some random, you know, Bullseye, like you mentioned. But yeah, so that was kind of cool. And again, I can't believe I hadn't seen this movie before. And it might be in part due to, I don't know if our lead character here, Frank Whaley, plays Jim Dodge. And he's not a household name, but he has been in a lot of well-known movies, including Pulp Fiction. He has been working consistently and has a lot of credits, but he's not your Rob Lowe. He's not your Matthew Broderick or Anthony Michael Hall. And so I think he even said, I think I saw somewhere that he was sort of like, yeah, they took a gamble on me, and kind of took a little bit of blame for maybe why the movie didn't do so well.
Which is unfortunate. I think he's a wonderful character actor. Anytime Frank Whaley pops up, you know that you're going to have a character on screen that gives a little bit more than the average actor. I always love seeing him pop up. He plays kind of the nerdy, awkward fellow like he does in this film, but he also plays mean and sadistic real well. I don't know if you ever saw the film from 2007, 2008 called Vacancy with Luke Wilson and Kate Beckinsale. But he plays the proprietor of a motel that is making snuff films, and he is just nasty mean in that particular film. So yeah, I always love seeing him pop up. I think, you know, you mentioned that the production did take a gamble on casting him. However, I think if they had cast anyone else at the time, especially a known actor, it would have cheapened the film a little bit. You buy him as Jim Dodge. You know what I mean? You buy him as being this fast-talking liar. You know what I mean? Much more so than you would have if they had cast any other
liar.
any other name at the time. I'm trying to think of a 20-something-year-old name in 1991. You know, I mean, can you imagine if Christian Slater was in this film, for example? It wouldn't play as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He would be much more cool.
We have Jennifer Connelly playing Josie McClellan, and I think they used her maybe after the fact. Like they really, really leaned on her looks, I think, in this movie. I mean, she was gorgeous. She looked just like breathtakingly beautiful. But that white tank top was doing a lot of the work for this movie. What do you think, Sean?
I mean, I would agree. But I mean, you look at a film like Weird Science. Is Kelly LeBrock doing? I mean, Kelly LeBrock in that film is a mentor too. We can say she's a mentor figure. But I mean, her entire role in Weird Science was sex appeal as well. I mean, I don't know. I hear some of these statements from Hughes, and it's kind of like, you know what I mean? I mean, because again, if you break the film down, the film is pretty much based on the gimmick of what would you do if you were locked in. I honestly think, if I could go back real quick, I honestly think that Hughes wrote this over the course of a weekend purely under the idea of what would you do if you were locked in a department store overnight with the girl of your dreams? And that's what the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that he, and that's what a lot of writers do. They write a script, you know, on the fly based off a single idea. I think that's what Hughes did, only he had it in probably about maybe 60% Home Alone in there as well to kind of sell it and make it work. But yeah, no, I mean, and I think all of the characters in this film, the two characters that I will say I don't think are fleshed out that, to be perfectly honest, are the thieves. I don't think the thieves are really that strong. But if you look at Jim Dodge's dad in the film, I think he's doing an amazing job. The actor who is playing Jennifer Connelly's dad as well. I mean, you buy him as being this millionaire who's essentially running the town. And then can we say William Forsythe? Oh my God, William Forsythe as the manager of the night cleaning crew. In his one scene that he is in, he's awesome as well. I mean, for 86 minutes, I think this is a fun movie. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I knew William Forsythe was in this, but then I didn't even catch him, like, because it was so brief. He's like the custodian that locks Jim in until 7 a.m. the next day. We also get per John Hughes movies usual, we get a John Candy cameo. He was uncredited in this, but he plays the manager of the Target store that hires Jim. So that, like, you can't go wrong with John Candy in your movie.
No. I mean, I think it goes without saying that he and John Hughes were like really, really, really good friends in throughout the 80s and everything. And, and there are various reports that one of the reasons that caused John Hughes to kind of quit writing and directing throughout the 90s was he was really, really hit hard by John Candy's death. And I think if you look at a lot of the films that he had done, especially like Curly Sue, for example, which was his last directorial effort, you can see that the magic really wasn't there too much anymore with Hughes. However, I would also argue too, I think when he approached the 90s, he was kind of in an awkward space because all of the muses that he had used throughout the 80s had grown up and were adults now too. So I wonder if he kind of felt like a man at a time, to where he didn't really like, okay, I can no longer continue with the whole high school subgenre, but all of the ingredients that I built this relationship with have grown up and moved on without me. So I wonder if he was in a weird way in this transitional phase where he didn't really know what to do in some ways. And I realize that sounds like I'm throwing shade at Hughes, and I don't mean to do that at any means, but I think that could kind of explain the disconnect that we saw him experience in that 90s period.
100%. He very clearly, there was a clear separation, and there was a falling out with Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall because they didn't want to keep doing the same thing. And I think you're absolutely right. And then he started doing Kid Fair. And this one is kind of like a middle of the road one, but Home Alone and Beethoven and Dennis the Menace and Curly Sue, like that's all like his 90s movies, and Home Alone 2, seem to be more kid fare. But this one is still kind of trying to lean into that. I think you brought up a good point about they're not teenagers. These two are, a few years removed. They're 21, I want to say. And yeah, it is like you're stuck in a Target at night. It's a fun premise, and it is a fun movie. Very short though. It went by very quickly. I do want to also quickly talk about some of the other cast, including our incompetent robbers. We have Nestor Pyle and Gil Kinney were the characters' names, which I don't even know if that ever came up in the movie, but they're played by brothers in real life, Dermot and Kieran Mulroney. And this was wild to me to see. I'm unfamiliar with Kieran, but Dermot, everybody knows Dermot. And he was doing something. I'm not sure what it was exactly, but he was definitely going for something in this movie. What did you think of our robbers here?
I honestly think they're the weakest link. I really do. I think Dermot Mulroney is, like you said, he's doing something. He's kind of adding something there. I think the partner that they have partnered him up with, his brother, actually kind of hurts the dynamic a bit because that guy really adds absolutely nothing. So in the end, it's kind of Dermot who's, pretty much carrying most of the weight there in that relationship.
Yep.
But yeah, I like I said,
agreed.
I think they're kind of a weak element. They don't really pose much of a threat, to be perfectly honest, because they seem so inept that you don't really buy them and as giving Jim Dodge and Jennifer Connelly a run for their money in any kind of ways. You know what I mean? They're just kind of there. They're kind of dopey. You can almost tell how we talk about how this script was templated. I would not be surprised if the whole robber element was added in at the very 11th hour before it went in production because they figured out Home Alone was a hit. Let's add more of the Home Alone stew to this particular concoction. I don't really think they work. They don't completely derail the film, I don't think, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there was something missing there. They needed to be fleshed out a little more. It was just sort of like two movies in one. There didn't need to be robbers involved in this situation. But if you're going to introduce it, like you said, because of Home Alone, yeah, there needed to be more of a reason why they were there. They were just bumbling idiots. But, it was fun to see Dermot Mulroney doing something very strange. He also had an incredible unibrow in this movie. Yeah, a couple of the other characters. So Frank's parents, we have Bud and Dottie Dodge. Bud is played by John M. Jackson. He looked familiar to me, but I didn't really know why. But he's best known for playing Rear Admiral A.J. Chegwidden on the CBS series Jag, and also guest star on its spinoff NCIS, recurring cast to its spinoff NCIS Los Angeles. He didn't or regularly use his middle initial M, but there was already a John Jackson in the Screen Actors Guild, so he had to use his middle initial. That's who he is. And then did you recognize the mom? Dottie Dodge is played by Jenny O'Hara. She's a very familiar face. Did you recognize her?
I did. Who's still around, thank God. But I recognized her as she played Doug's mom on King of Queens.
Yes.
I remember her in the TV spots that they would play for this film. You know, those quick, 30 seconds TV spots. She would always get the scene where she's at the dinner table with her mouth full as they're eating dinner, and she says, "That's not true," or whatever. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, the TV spots always played her moment when she said that, which I always thought was kind of an interesting part to play. But yeah.
It took me a minute to remember where I was like, God, she's familiar. But yeah, Doug's mom. And also she was in the Mindy Project, Big Love, My Sister Sam, Transparent was a TV series, but that I've not seen. And also Esther Harris in Mystic River. So she's a super familiar face. Then we have Noble Willingham. That is quite a name. He plays Roger Roy McClellan, Josie's dad. And speaking of City Slickers, as one of the top 5 movies in 91, he played Clay Stone in City Slickers. But I think he is most known for playing C.D. Parker on Walker, Texas Ranger. I have not seen that. I don't know. Officer Don is played by Barry Corbin. He's best known for his starring role as Maurice Minifield in the TV series Northern Exposure that ran from 90 to 95, so smack dab right now. And he actually earned 2 Emmy Awards. No, nominated. I don't think he won, but 2 noms for that. So yeah, that rounds out our cast. We have a very familiar composer here for our music. We talked about him in the Great Outdoors episode, Thomas Newman, who is a composer, conductor, orchestrator, and in addition to being a frequent John Hughes collaborator, he's really best known for his film scores, earning 6 Grammy Awards, an Emmy Award, 2 BAFTAs, and 15 Oscar nominations. So that is Thomas Newman. And I think the music in this seemed very John Hughesy, so that kind of tracks with your typical John Hughes movie.
You know, you mentioned music, and what's also interesting, I remember in the TV spots and trailers that aired on network TV at the time, but Fine Young Cannibals, their song "She Drives Me Crazy" accompanied this film in the trailers.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen the trailers, but they picked a catchy tune for the time to accompany the TV spots.
It wasn't super clear, but I found a $6 million budget, which is pretty low. A lot of John Hughes movies have really low budgets, but $6 million. And it grossed worldwide $11.3 million. So it was a pretty big disappointment in terms of box office, as we kind of already talked about. As you said, you found this movie fun, as did I. And like I had said, I'd not seen it before, but you clearly have. What is your history with career opportunities?
I remember vividly seeing the TV spots when I was in school. So I'm trying to think at the time, I was 8 or 9 years old, I want to say, something like that. And so I remember seeing the TV spots, and I was kind of infatuated with the gimmick of it. You know, what would I do if I was, stuck in a Target overnight? And okay, with the girl of my dreams, I didn't really think of that at the times. I was too young, but the gimmick of it really sold it. And yeah, when it came to rental, I rented the VHS from my grocery store. Actually, if you remember those days when grocery stores rented VHS tapes.
Yes.
Yeah, I rented it, on a school night. And it's not like any of the other ones that resonated with me around that time, that I would come back to multiple times. I think Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey was one that I came back to way more often than this particular film. But it is in my collection, and it is one that I do watch every few years because it is a pretty harmless movie. And again, I want to stress, if you look at it in the context of, compared with the 16 Candles, the Breakfast Club, the Some Kind of Wonderful, if you look at it as a continuation of those movies, I think it does have a linear narrative, because it does follow that kid who maybe is awkward and unsure about his future, and it seems like everybody else has their plan, their 5-year plan in place, except for him. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of young adults who are in that situation. And yeah, one thing I will say, every time I watch this movie, it's one thing that always bothers me, but he's the night cleanup crew in the movie. And I don't know about you, but he's making way more messes than there were in the first place. So every time I watch this, I'm always kind of like, dude, you're going to have to clean that up. Like, what are you doing? That always kind of bothered me. But
as an adult, because I hadn't seen this as a kid, I very much, that was bothering me too. Like my OCD or my just anal retentive nature. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Also, he's just like eating things, playing with things, trying on clothes. And it's like, you're going to have to put all that back. And he was a little bit driving me crazy also. But I don't know. I feel like they could have elevated some of the adventures. It was just sort of like they roller skated a lot, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more, like the adventures, the things he does. They could have gotten a little more creative. I feel like for, what would you do if you got stuck in a Target overnight? So I was maybe hoping for a little more excitement or entertainment in that area. And maybe that's why they brought in the robbers, to add another element of surprise and intrigue.
And I'm trying to think, but security cameras existed back in 1991, right? I would like to think that he had to know that everything was on camera, or maybe not, you know what I mean? But as I watched it again, I kind of thought to myself, he was making this mess and he's roller skating around. I feel like this is a guy who's just trying to get through the night because he doesn't plan on keeping that job past the night. You know what I mean? And I see this quite a bit with young adults. They'll try a job out. They do work at a few shifts and they're like, this isn't for me. See you later. And I kind of wonder if maybe that's where he was like, you know what, look, they didn't give me the management job that I thought I was going to get from John Candy. They gave me this cleanup crew. They locked me in. I'm going to ride it out until sunrise and then I'm gone. And if I don't even get my paycheck, then I don't care. I almost kind of wonder if that was his mentality, which again is something that I think a lot of, let's be honest, fairly irresponsible young adults can certainly relate to. You know what I mean? Not looking beyond
100%.
6 p.m. that night. You know what I mean? It's just living in the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's 21, he's living at home and he can't keep a job. So to your point, maybe he doesn't care if he gets fired, because this is one of so many, string of jobs where he gets fired from. He's aimless and his dad is like, listen, you got to get a job or we're going to ship you to your work for your uncle in some other state or something. They're like, they keep pointing this out. And I think this was a thing more so in the 80s and 90s, because now it seems like a lot of adults live with their parents, but they're like, once you're out of school, you either pay rent or you leave. Like that's the story here.
Yeah, no, I mean, and in a lot of ways, could his dad be a little more loving? Sure. But his dad is also 100% justified. You know what I mean? If you're not going to school, you're not working. Well, you need to be doing something. I've seen this quite a bit. It's like, dude, like, you need to pick a lane. College isn't for everyone. And I tell this all the time to my students. I totally get that. Find something. If you can find a trade, you'll probably be better off, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, man, just sitting and existing until you find something, that's not, benefiting anybody. And so I think that's kind of what Jim Dodge is, golly, for being 1991, it's amazing how that type of individual still very much exists today, post high school,
Great point. I mean, he's 21. I would say nowadays you find people in their late 20s or early 30s. I think partially, to get to a financial element here in a minute, but things are very expensive now. So I know that's a part of why a lot of young people have a hard time moving out. But to that point, Josie says, so she's this like spoiled rich girl and she's sick of living under her father's thumb and she dreams of, she wants to go to LA. They get this plan. They're like, when we leave here, once we ditch these robbers, we're going to go to LA together. I have $52,000 in my purse. which is wild. And then he says, that's more than my house cost. So it just goes to show things were much more affordable back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, to be fair, no, you're exactly right there. So yeah, isn't it funny when you talk to, parents and family members who bought houses back in like the 80s and the early 90s, what they got them for, and you're like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. That's how much a car costs. Like, what's happening here? Yeah.
Yeah.
A question for you. So they call Jim the town liar. Everybody kind of knows how he is. He lies. He goes from one shitty job to the next. But we see him over and over again trying to impress the neighborhood kids, like little kids. Why?
Mm-hmm.
He's 21 years old. Why is he trying to impress the neighborhood kids?
Because he can't impress anyone else his own age. That's as simple as that. You know what I mean? They look up to him. People his own age, people who he's graduated with, people he's gone to high school with, they're on to his grift. They know what is true and what isn't. You know what I mean? But a little kid that's a little impressionable and doesn't really know. Yeah. Heck yeah. And what a great, what a great final scene though, too, where the kids get to see that, maybe not everything out of his mouth was complete crap. I always loved the ending where he's in the car with Jennifer Connelly and he drives away and they're like, oh man, he's so cool. Because in the end, does he have a career at the end of the film? No, but he does get to leave the film more respected, I think, than he was when the film, where we see him at the beginning of the film. You know what I'm saying?
Good point. Yeah, so they do end up, like, I'm jumping around here, but the movie ended. I can't determine whether I think it was abrupt or not, because the final scene essentially is they escape the robbers and cut to these two are at a pool in LA, in Hollywood. So they did what they wanted to do, but then that's it. It ends. Like, so I was like, did we need more than that or not? I can't decide. What do you think, Sean?
I don't know if it's a matter of can't deciding. I think, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where, look, does he have to have his 5-year plan, immediately laid out? No, but we at least, like I said, I think it's kind of the hero's journey archetype. You know what I mean? He comes back to where he started in the film, being his hometown, being his house, but he is leaving with a newfound sense of respect. Maybe not so much about himself, because he is pretty cocky, but I think the people around him certainly know that he can do more. It would have been nice. I do think it would have been nice if we did get to see a little bit more closure between him and his dad at the end of the movie, because there are a few scenes in the film that almost come across as kind of pointless. You know what I mean? There's the scene where his dad can't sleep through the night and is raiding the kitchen and eating chicken and peanut butter. And you're kind of like, okay, obviously we have that scene because he feels he doesn't like the way he left things with Jim, and as a father, I certainly get that as well. You know what I mean? Wake up in the middle of the night and you're thinking, oh crap, I screwed up there. I should have been better. But we don't get that scene at the end where he and his dad kind of embrace, and his dad's like, look, I don't expect you to have it figured out, but I love you and I support you. We could have gotten that. Unfortunately, we didn't. The film was short enough. I don't think they would have lost anything and probably would have gained something if they added that a little bit. But did you feel that way, though, about those scenes with his dad in the middle of the night?
Yeah, it's not like they had to cut for time, because this movie was extremely short. So I agree. That would have been a perfect way to make us feel, because it did feel a little abrupt to me. Yeah, they should have reconciled the parent relationship a little bit more. But I'm so glad you brought up that scene, though, Sean, because granted, I don't eat chicken, but he's raiding the fridge. He sticks a chicken leg in the peanut butter jar. And I was like, oh my God, that's disgusting on so many levels. I mean, like, wow.
Yeah, no, not very appetizing, but hey, he's a dad who's having a sleepless night. You know what I mean? I guess it works to that end. But yeah, you mentioned spring this came out. Can I just say real quick too, the other thing too that I think is important to note about this particular film is just that a movie like this went to theaters. And I've been saying this numerous times. I think I've echoed it on my show when I was going, but I've said it to friends and everything like that. But a movie like this nowadays would not go to theaters. At best, it would be premiered on like a Netflix or a Hulu. Like
Mhm.
anymore, it seems like the
Right.
only thing that comes to theaters are IPs and franchises, comic book movies, things of that nature. So it's really kind of cool that in the
Yep.
spring of 1991, this little movie managed to go to theaters. And boy, oh boy, would I love to go back to those days, because we got so much more eclectic, weird, diverse content that occupied the multiplexes than we get nowadays.
The 90s were all about that. So this is the perfect opening for a trend that would continue in the 90s. While this wasn't like an independent film, it was like a little film, so I agree. And I also long for the days of the 90s. I wish we could go back. Speaking of which, there is a shot where they're showing all the items that the robbers, they're like filling up their carts that they're going to steal all this stuff from Target, and they take this red phone, and I had that exact red phone. It's got a black handle on a red base. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that scene? I had that phone. I loved it.
I remember that scene. The other scene that I remember, if we're going to go back, looking at Target, but the wall of tapes, the wall of cassette tapes. I don't know if you noticed that either, but that was an area that I loved perusing. Cassette tapes were replaced by CDs. CDs were eventually replaced by MP3 and everything like that. But, it's just wild to think that there was a time where a Target had a music section, and the music section was one, maybe two walls that from ceiling to the ground were stacked with tapes in alphabetical order by genre. You know what I mean? It was almost, it was kind of fun in a weird way, if we could go back, but it was always kind of fun. This is before the age of Amazon too. So if there was a song that you wanted, if there was a band that you wanted, whatever it may be, going to the store and running down, going in alphabetical order, trying to find it, it almost felt like a fun scavenger hunt in a lot of ways.
Great point. And that scene with the wall of tapes, when Josie's looking through them, one of the visible titles is the soundtrack for The Breakfast Club. So, of course, there's always all these little, John Hughes is notorious for that. So doing things like that. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not notice that, but yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me.
Not very much trivia, but I have a few pieces of trivia. I'm curious to see what you think. In the UK, this movie it was released as One Wild Night, which I think is a far better title for what this movie is than Career Opportunities. What do you think?
I think I'm going to have to kind of disagree there. I think One Wild Night is
Okay.
much more, is too much more on the nose. You know what I mean? I like the idea of Career Opportunities because, again, if you're going along with the idea of kind of the wayward 21-year-old not knowing his place and needing to have a career, I think it kind of lends itself well. One Wild Night, yeah, maybe that particular title would gotten this maybe a little bit more recognized to where more people are talking about it maybe nowadays, I guess I would assume. But I don't know. I think the title Career Opportunities is pretty apt, I feel.
Interesting. That's fair. I guess maybe that's why, I was unfamiliar with this movie. And based on the title, I sort of thought it would be like a workplace comedy or something. So I was kind of surprised to realize what it was actually about. But you bringing up his state of mind kind of makes sense as well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Jennifer Connelly and how she is presented in the film. It's funny, the last time I watched this, my wife was watching it with me and she was just like, oh my God, her eyebrows. It's so funny that she mentioned that. I don't know if you picked up on that or not, but she was like, her eyebrows are out of control, So maybe that was a 1991 style. I don't know. But she is beautiful in the film.
She really is. So two things. Yes, eyebrows, like that style of eyebrows was much more of a thing in the early 90s. But B, Jennifer Connelly, it's kind of her trademark. Like her eyebrows are kind of what she's always had, those kind of eyebrows. She's kind of known for that.
Yeah, interesting.
There were a few other people considered for Jim and Josie. Terry Polo screen tested for Josie. That would have been a very different movie.
Yeah. And it's interesting that she really didn't get her big role until exactly 9 years later in Meet the Parents, huh? Yeah. And then she also kind of slowly disappeared again, didn't she? But I think Jennifer Connelly, I mean, she nails it. I mean, just like Frank Whaley nails the role of Jim Dodge, I think Jennifer Connelly really does nail the role of that bombshell that is sexualized by everybody around her, even like her dad's business partners, which was really gross, but who wants to break free of that.
I agree. Jennifer Connelly was pretty perfect for this. She's got that mysterious nature to her, really beautiful, kind of that quietness and like a seductiveness to her that even adults are grossly into. I guess she was 21, but still. And then I did read that Josh Charles and Pauly Shore were both considered for Jim Dodge. Now, Josh Charles was Christina Applegate's love interest in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and I never really loved him in that. So I don't know. I guess he would have been more or less the same. They're both kind of like to me as Jim. But Pauly Shore, that takes it to a goofy level. And I almost think that would have been funnier. I don't know. I guess I'm just not a big Frank Whaley person, I guess.
I mean, I think it, look, I think it would have worked if it was Pauly Shore. I can certainly see that, but it also would have become a Pauly Shore movie. It would have, had that same type of humor that we saw. Actually, maybe not 1991, because he really didn't develop the Weasel persona until about a year later, really, when he was doing MTV. So maybe he would have been a little bit more normalized. I could certainly have seen that maybe working, but I don't know. I think Frank Whaley is fun. I love what they give, the little characteristic with his hair, how he kind of has this Elvis style hair. He almost feels like a man out of time in a lot of ways, like he's from the 50s, but in the 90s.
Yeah.
Even like his clothing that he's wearing, I love the scene too, where he's at the coffee shop at the beginning. That's the other thing too. The scene at the beginning where he's at the coffee shop, sitting by himself, telling these stories, trying to get people impressed. And he's saying, when are you going to get, is it sashimi or something like that? This dish, he reminds me of the, what's the term? My daughter taught me it actually about a week ago, a pick-me girl. You know what I mean? He kind of reminds me of someone who's purposely just saying something, throwing it out in the ether so that someone could turn their head and be like, oh, wait a minute. You've had that particular dish from this other continent, just so he can get it's so cloying, but in a weird way, that's his character.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I don't hate Frank Whaley for this. And yeah, he plays that like desperation. It's like his character has this desperation for attention, but he's like dorky and he gets his dream girl in the end. And so it's every boy's dream, I guess, the end of this movie. You guys tell me what you think. Have you guys seen Career Opportunities? Did you like it more than John Hughes did? I did. I think I liked it more than John Hughes did. It's a weird little ride through Target that it won me over definitely more than I thought. Sean, do you have any closing thoughts about Career Opportunities? And then tell us where we can find more of you if you've got anything to plug.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I don't think it's John Hughes' best film. However, I would say, his final film was Curly Sue with Jim Belushi. That was his final film. I would say, I think this particular film is a much better cap to his career. He's known for those 80s films so well. I think if you were on a marathon and you started with, 16 Candles, then Breakfast Club, or excuse me, I think it was Weird Science first, right? Weird Science, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, then Pretty in Pink, then Some Kind of Wonderful, and then Career Opportunities, I think it would be a really nice cap to that entire series in a lot of ways. It's not the best, obviously it's for good reason that it's not as quotable and iconic, I think, as some of those other ones, but I do think it has, a lot of things of merit. Like I said, it is a delightful little movie that I don't think is terrible by any means. So I really do appreciate you extending the invite and allowing me to go down memory lane and watch this one again. This is one that I was able to show my tween at home, my preteen daughter at home. There's a couple parts that I maybe had to mute or something like that, but she did enjoy this one as well. As far as any plugs, I really don't have anything at the moment. I think continue checking out the Last of the Action Heroes Podcast Network feed, because there are some cool shows on there. If anyone does want to hear more of me, I think the final 20 22, 23 episodes, something like that, of my show are still on the network feed. So you may have to go back a bit, but it's called I Must Break This Podcast, and they can be found on there.
Awesome. Yeah, I would definitely check out Sean's catalog from I Must Break This Podcast. It's fun. We all need a little more Dolph in our life, is what I always say. But if you had fun with us on this ride with career opportunities, I would very much appreciate it if you would let me know by leaving a review. Pretty please. And until next time, be kind. Rewind.